Hi, I'm Jeff Murrow. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. And today I'll be talking about they don't make men like Peter Ellis Bean anymore. Um, the inspiration comes for this from family get together yesterday, with it being Labor Day. My sons came over, had a great time, and one of them was talking about a pet lizard that he has in a storage shed. And it reminded me of the story of Peter Ellis Bean, and he's one of the very colorful characters of Texas. And if you've never heard of Peter Ellis Bean, you want to check it out. This man, the things that he did, it astounds me. Anyways, let's go ahead and start with a little bit of a backstory. Um, Part of the backstory: Peter Ellis Bean's father was good friends with none other than Daniel Boone. A lot of times we forget that these adventurers, they have a heritage of coming from families that were very much into adventure, and Peter Ellis Bean was one of them. Think about it. Your dad's friend is Daniel Boone. And so when the time comes for adventure, he goes and he hooks up with Philip Nolan. And Philip Nolan was what the history books call a filibuster. Now, a filibuster, I know when I was in Texas history, I heard the term, we tossed it around, and we look at those as just people that are adventurers. Well, that doesn't give you the whole story. Filibuster is a variation of the French word filibustier, which is essentially a land pirate. And pirates had a terrible reputation at the time that they lived, and most nations went around and they hung pirates, including land pirates like Peter Ellis Bean. Bean got caught with the Philip Nolan expedition. The Spanish authorities hunted him down and captured him and put him in jail. And this guy, this was almost like, the Steve McQueen in The Great Escape, because this guy, it was hard to keep him in prison because he kept breaking out and kept the Spanish authorities on their toes. And one of the times he broke out, he killed several guys. Another time, he managed to get on board a ship and was fixing to sail away, but Spanish authorities caught him. And then finally, the Spanish authorities backed down a little bit and let him have a business there in town. And he went into the hatting business, making hats for people. And he apparently had quite a reputation for being a hatter. And it just so happened that the prison that he was kept in and essentially had to report to came under siege from some of the Mexican revolutionaries. And the bunch that was over in there, that part of Mexico, was none other than Morelos. If you've ever been to Puerto Morelos or Morelos, Mexico, you're familiar with the name. But, if you ever look on the Mexican coins, he's the guy that has the bandana around his head and wrapped around. Very famous Mexican leader of the revolution. Of course, he was caught and executed. But because he was there during the time of Father Hidalgo and the uprising, guess what? Bean managed to escape. And he was supportive of the Mexican independence movement, so much so that he decided to go ahead and do a foray up into the Louisiana Territory and hook up with none other than Jean Lafitte to try to get his support for the revolution. And while he was there, this was about the time of the War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans. And so Bean was there along with many of the survivors of the Gutierrez-McGee expedition fighting for Andrew Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans. A lot of people don't realize that many of the veterans of that Gutierrez-McGee expedition were there manning the cannons at the battle. In fact, Peter Ellis Bean taught them how to make hot shot, how to build a little furnace and warm up the shot so that they could shoot it and do more damage on the British. Of course, they also don't tell you that a lot of them were Frenchmen there, and some of the Frenchmen had some resentments because of the defeat at Waterloo, and they welcomed the Battle of New Orleans as an opportunity to get revenge on the British for what happened at Waterloo. But that's another story. But Bean went ahead and developed some good relations with Lafitte, because that piece is going to come into bearing later. In fact, Peter Ellis Bean endeared himself to the Mexican government once they were able to kick the Spanish out, and he got into power, and he eventually rose through the ranks and worked his way up to colonel. In fact, old Peter Ellis Bean, during the time of the Texas Revolution, he essentially allowed himself to be placed under house arrest so that he was not arrested and shipped back to Mexico. And some people suspect that he had some sympathies for those seeking Texas independence. Because sometimes you wonder, well, gee, why wasn't he there with Santa Anna in the fight? Well, because he put himself under house arrest. But if you ever get a chance to read more about Bean and his his adventures, he was instrumental in helping with the first Mexican Navy, which came along through some of that connection he developed with Jean Lafitte. And Peter Ellis Bean provides an interesting bridge between the likes of, Jean Lafitte and Daniel Boone. A lot of these people that in your history class you hear about, and you wonder, gee, was there any connection between them? Yes, there was. And a lot of times people like Peter Ellis Bean come along, and he knew Daniel Boone, he knew Jean Lafitte, he knew some of these people in the Texas Revolution, like Sam Houston and so forth. And when you start looking at the relationship between people in history, you realize that it really is a small world. But Peter Ellis Bean, one of the times that he was in prison, he developed a close relationship with a lizard. And that lizard was his companion while he was in solitary confinement. And that's what made me think about the story of Peter Ellis Bean when my son told me about a lizard in his shed. So hopefully you'll learn more about Texas history and appreciate the interconnections between a lot of the key players. Because there's also Perry and Nolan and the Long Expedition. Oh, some fascinating stories that I'll be telling you about in the future. But until then, this is Jeff Murrow signing off. Vaya con Dios. Till next time. Goodbye.